So it's 2006. My friend Harold Ford calls me. He's running for US Senate in Tennessee. And he says, Mellody, I desperately need some national press. Do you have any ideas? So I had an idea. I called a friend who was in New York at one of the most successful media companies in the world, and she said, why don't we host an editorial board lunch for Harold? You come with him. Harold and I arrive in New York. We are in our best suits. We look like shiny new pennies. And we get to the receptionist and we say, we're here for the lunch. She motions for us to follow her. We walk through a series of corridors, and all of a sudden we find ourselves in a stark room, at which point she looks at us and she says, where are your uniforms? Just as this happens, my friend rushes in. The blood drains from her face. There are literally no words, right? And I look at her and I say, now, don't you think we need more than one black person in the US Senate? Now, Harold and I, we still laugh about that story. And in many ways, the moment caught me off guard. But deep, deep down inside, I actually wasn't surprised. And I wasn't surprised because of something my mother taught me about 30 years before. You see, my mother was ruthlessly realistic. I remember one day coming home from a birthday party where I was the only black kid invited. And instead of asking me the normal motherly questions like, did you have fun or how was the cake? My mother looked at me and she said, how did they treat you? I was 7. I did not understand. I mean, why would anyone treat me differently? But she knew. And she looked me right in the eye and she said, they will not always treat you well. Now, race is one of those topics in America that makes people extraordinarily uncomfortable. You bring it up at a dinner party or in a workplace environment, it is literally the conversational equivalent of touching the third rail. There is shock, followed by a long silence. And even coming here today, I told some friends and colleagues that I planned to talk about race, and they warned me. They told me, don't do it. There'd be huge risks in me talking about this topic, that people might think I'm a militant black woman and I would ruin my career. And I have to tell you, I actually for a moment was a bit afraid. Then I realized the first step to solving any problem is to not hide from it. And the first step to any form of action is awareness. And so I decided to actually talk about race. And I decided that if I came here and shared with you some of my experiences, then maybe we could all be a little less anxious and a little more bold in our conversations about race.
So today people came up to me and asked me how I became a teacher and why I wanted to become a teacher. So I remembered this story from a long time ago when I was in high school. I was working on a group project with my brothers and my sisters, and we were all discussing things. So there were young children, and we were all a mixed group, and they were teaching us and helping us, and we were all telling stories and talking about it. So I remember this one boy. He was a cute black boy, about 7 or 8 years old. But I tried to grab his attention and he didn't see me, and he kept looking the other way and he could not focus on me. So I was telling a story, but his eyes continued to focus on the sidewalk and not at me, although I was talking. So I was telling a story about a long winter and he looked at me, but he didn't look at me. So there were different stories that I was telling, and we kept talking about it for our group project, and it continued and continued until the semester was over. But then the project was finished and I thought about it, and I didn't think about him for a while. So way in the future, I was working at a school and I was selling popcorn and candy. And then someone tapped on my shoulder, and I looked, and there was this big, tall man. And he said, do you remember me? I said, no, I don't remember you. He said, do you remember me? No, I forgot your name. Oh, do you remember the stories we used to tell on our group project? All the time. What? I said. Oh my goodness, that was so far away. That was back in high school, and you didn't look at me. I know. I heard you, though. when we were telling the stories. Wow, that was a long, long time ago. So we continued telling the stories. Oh my goodness, yeah, I remember. So now he was married with children, and he had a happy life, and he was living a while. So it was important to become a teacher, because when we were doing that group project, I realized that teachers and stories and telling things and teaching children, that was something I really wanted to do. And one thing can make a difference in someone's life.